Just minutes ago, the diplomatic lifeline that could have pulled the Middle East back from the edge was severed. Iran's Supreme National Security Council, in a televised address that lasted barely 90 seconds, rejected the American peace framework outright. Not a negotiation, not a counteroffer, a flat, absolute, unmistakable refusal. Within the hour, oil futures spiked 11%. The USS Dwight D. Eisenhower carrier strike group altered course, and in Tehran, crowds gathered outside the former American embassy, burning not just flags, but the printed text of the proposal itself. The world had been holding its breath, hoping this plan would be the off-ramp, the one chance to prevent what every military analyst has been quietly warning about for months. And now that chance is gone. For the better part of 18 months, the United States and Iran have been locked in an escalatory spiral that most of the world hasn't fully appreciated. Houthi strikes on Red Sea shipping, Iranian-backed militia attacks on American bases in Iraq and Syria, covert Israeli operations inside Iranian territory, cyber attacks in both directions, tit for tat, each one slightly more audacious than the last. Then 3 months ago, everything changed. Intelligence agencies detected that Iran was accelerating uranium enrichment at the Fordo facility to 90% purity, weapons grade. The IAEA issued a confidential report that was leaked within days. Iran was estimated to be 8 to 12 weeks from having enough fissile material for a nuclear device, not a deliverable warhead, but a demonstrable capability. And in the calculus of nuclear deterrence, that distinction matters far less than most people think. Washington faced a choice: strike now and risk a regional war, or negotiate, offering Iran something significant enough to slow the program. The administration chose diplomacy and crafted a proposal of extraordinary scope: phased sanctions relief totaling $80 billion, recognition of Iran's right to civilian nuclear enrichment, a mutual non-aggression pact between Iran and the Gulf states, unfreezing of Iranian assets in foreign banks, and most controversially, quiet pressure on Israel to accept a regional nuclear inspection regime that would include Israeli facilities. That last provision nearly killed the plan before it was presented. Netanyahu reportedly called the White House and used language that diplomatic sources described only as unprecedented. The president listened and proceeded anyway. The plan was transmitted to Tehran through the Swiss embassy. For 72 hours, the world waited. Satellite imagery showed unusual activity at Iranian government buildings. The supreme leader convened an emergency session of the Supreme National Security Council. A Qatari government jet landed in Tehran, suggesting frantic last-minute mediation. Then came the rejection. The statement was delivered from behind a podium bearing the emblem of the Islamic Republic. The framework, Tehran said, was built on arrogance. It assumed the Islamic Republic could be bought. It demanded Iran surrender its sovereign right to self-defense in exchange for promises that could be revoked by the next American administration, just as a nuclear deal had been revoked in 2018. The statement closed with a single sentence that sent a chill through every foreign ministry in the world: the Islamic Republic does not negotiate its existence. To understand why this matters so profoundly, you need to understand the geography. The Strait of Hormuz, barely 21 nautical miles wide at its narrowest, carries 20% of the world's oil every single day. Iran controls the entire northern shore. If Hormuz closes, even for a week, the global economy doesn't stumble, it seizes. Iran has spent 45 years building a military designed to exploit this vulnerability. Hundreds of fast attack craft armed with anti-ship missiles, sophisticated coastal defense systems, kilo-class submarines, and domestically produced midget submarines designed for mine-laying operations. Iran possesses thousands of naval mines that could close the strait in hours. Clearing them could take months, and its ballistic missile program, the largest in the Middle East, can strike every American base in the region. This is why Iran's rejection was not a bluff from weakness. It was a calculation from asymmetric strength. Iran cannot defeat the United States in a conventional war, but it can make victory unbearably costly. The information war ignited immediately. Iranian state media framed the rejection as a triumph of sovereignty, drawing parallels to the 1953 CIA coup. The White House described it as disappointing but not unexpected, adding that all options remain on the table, a phrase universally understood to include military force. The global reaction exposed every fracture line in the international order. Russia reaffirmed its strategic partnership with Iran, a relationship deepened enormously since the Ukraine invasion through weapons transfers and military cooperation. China called for restraint while offering to mediate, balancing its dependence on Gulf oil against its desire to displace American influence. European reactions were fractured and fatigued. The Gulf states issued cautious public statements, while privately activating missile defense systems and raising military readiness to the highest levels. Israel's response was the most ominous. Netanyahu convened a 7-hour security cabinet meeting. No official statement followed, but Israeli military correspondents reported that the IDF had been authorized to accelerate preparations for independent action against Iran's nuclear program. The implication was unmistakable. If America wouldn't act, Israel was prepared to act alone. An Israeli strike would implicate other nations regardless of their consent. Overflying Saudi, Jordanian, or Iraqi airspace would drag those countries into the conflict, and Iran has made explicitly clear that any Israeli attack would be treated as an American attack, triggering full retaliation, including Hezbollah's arsenal of 150,000 rockets aimed at Israel, Houthi strikes on Gulf infrastructure, and militia attacks on the 2,500 American troops in Iraq. Energy markets reacted violently. Brent crude hit $114. Shipping insurance for Hormuz transit tripled overnight. Asian markets opened sharply lower. Gold surged past $2,800 an ounce. Defense stocks rallied. The economic dimension is not secondary to this crisis, it is central to it. A war that disrupts Gulf oil supplies would trigger a global recession. But here's the paradox. The economic cost of inaction may now approach the cost of action. If Iran achieves nuclear capability, Saudi Arabia has publicly stated it will pursue its own nuclear weapons. Turkey would likely follow. Egypt has hinted at the same. A nuclear arms race in the most volatile region on Earth is a nightmare scenario that makes the current crisis look manageable by comparison. Satellite imagery from the past 48 hours shows Iranian mobile missile launchers dispersing from garrison positions. Additional naval vessels have sortied into the strait. Revolutionary Guard drone units are deploying to forward positions along Iran's western border. On the American side, additional destroyers and at least one Ohio-class guided missile submarine have joined the carrier strike group. The Air Force has deployed tanker aircraft to Gulf bases essential for sustained operations over Iran. Israeli aero missile defense batteries have been activated, and F-35 squadrons have conducted extended-range exercises designed for exactly this scenario. The window for preventing a nuclear-armed Iran is closing, and everyone involved knows it. The rejection was not just a diplomatic setback, it was a statement of intent. Iran will not voluntarily surrender its nuclear ambitions regardless of inducements. That leaves the world with two options: accept a nuclear-armed Iran and manage the consequences, or prevent it through force and accept those consequences instead. Neither option is good. Both carry risks that are genuinely existential for millions of people. There is a concept in game theory called the security dilemma. Actions taken by one state to increase its security inevitably decrease the security of others, producing an escalatory spiral where everyone ends up less secure. The Middle East right now is the purest expression of that dilemma the modern world has produced. Iran pursues nuclear weapons because it feels threatened. Its pursuit makes others feel more threatened. The prospect of military action makes Iran accelerate further. And around it goes, each revolution bringing the world closer to a conflict that no rational actor wants, but that the structure of the situation makes increasingly difficult to avoid. The Cuban Missile Crisis is often cited as proof that great powers can step back from the brink. What is forgotten is how close they came to failing. A Soviet submarine commander named Vasily Arkhipov personally prevented the launch of a nuclear torpedo, overruling two officers who wanted to fire. The world was saved by one man's judgment. That is not a reassuring precedent. That is a terrifying one. And the current crisis lacks the features that made resolution possible then. Kennedy and Khrushchev had direct communication. The United States and Iran do not have diplomatic relations. The Cuban crisis involved actors. This one involves half a dozen states with independent decision-making and divergent interests. Somewhere tonight in Tehran, military commanders are reviewing targeting packages. In the Pentagon, planners are updating strike options beneath the Mediterranean. An Israeli submarine sits silently carrying weapons that could reshape the Middle East in a single afternoon, and somewhere in between, in back channels and encrypted messages, diplomats are searching desperately for a door that may no longer exist. Every few decades, the world arrives at a moment where the systems that maintain order are tested to their absolute limits, where the assumptions that underpin stability are revealed to be not immutable laws, but fragile human constructions held together by habit, agreement, and the fading memory of what happens when they fail. The post-war order was always more fragile than it appeared, and now, in a region where civilizations have risen and fallen for 6,000 years, that order faces a test its architects never imagined. The fog ahead is thick, the ground beneath is uncertain, and the only thing more frightening than what we know is waiting. Is the possibility that something far worse lies just beyond what we can see.